Welcome to Automating Your Site, leveraging tools that run themselves with me, Xander Karsten. I am the Director of Onboarding and Projects here at LegalServer. Today, we're going to really focus on automating tasks and other parts of your site using 5 tools that we have in LegalServer. Most of these, the first 4, are all free and just part of your core LegalServer offerings. The 5th one, Workflows, is an additional module. There's a cost associated with it, but I threw it in here just so that folks really got a sense of all the different things that were possible with just current functionality that we have in LegalServer. We're going to go through each of these just to define what they are and some of the various pros and cons of each. And then we'll go through a couple of different use cases, which one may be most useful, most appropriate for different scenarios. If you do have any questions, if you do have any specific ideas or specific use cases that you'd like to check out with any of us, feel free to shoot us an email at support@legalserver.org, and we will talk more about those support offerings at the end of the call. So we're going to start with formula fields. These are custom fields that you can create in your LegalServer instance, and they will allow you to automatically calculate different variables, provide different information based on values in other fields. So some of the real keys to this is, unlike some other tools, the data is rendered when your page loads, whether that's a profile, whether that is a report. So you don't have to worry about backfilling data. You may want to know, an example that we will see a little bit later is the number of days since a visa was issued, and calculate in a field like date that a renewal is required, or whatever date that is. We can save that as its own field with its own information, and you don't have to worry about not having that data for existing cases. In formula fields, that data all gets rendered whenever you load the page, so you don't have to worry about backfilling. You can create as many as you need or want. There's no limit to the number of formula fields you can have on your site. I always recommend that folks keep in mind either providing some description, providing some information to themselves in the future about why you created a field, and if you're not going to use it, making it inactive. But that is more of a best practice. That's more of just how to keep your site clean. Technically, in the back end, in the database, you can have as many as you want. So these are also very powerful. They allow you to group different variables, meet different conditions, create different formulas, allowing you to be a mini developer. That can be a pro or a con, right? So you're going to want to make sure that with any kind of tool that provides that mini development power in your hands, that you're testing these, and you're testing these really well. And finally, it's silent. So for what that means, your users don't have to do anything. They don't have to go to a specific page, a specific form, a specific process for that data to be filled in. You could just literally have a formula field that only appears on a report and only updates when that report is run, either as a regular report or as an embedded report. Our formula fields we'll talk about how to actually access them closer to the end of this presentation. However, if they're not currently on your site, they can be enabled. We just need an email to support@legalserver.org, and we can get those spun up on your demo site and then on your live site. The second tool is our guided navigation. This is a way that gathers and evaluates data that can be used to determine what the next action is. So many of you already have a guided navigation, maybe a dialogue runner on a process, in a form, that triggers some sort of data entry or creates some kind of action on a case. And that guided navigation, many people group this in with branch logic, because what you're doing as part of data entry is, as you enter that data based on either the data that you're entering or all of the data in the case, it's showing you maybe a specific block or setting a specific field to a value, or perhaps generating a document, collecting a case note, those different kind of next actions on a case. Unlike branch logic, which really can only be triggered by a few specific fields on a form, guided navigation, you can create those different expressions based on any information that's already been entered in a case, whether or not it's on that specific form, whether it's on the form that you're actually looking at. For guided navigation, there are some real pros and some limitations. It's very flexible. Oftentimes people really use it just to show different fields, to collect different information based on the information that came directly before. So, enter a veteran, and much like branch logic, you're just seeing veteran-specific questions. It can really be used for so much more than that, including generating specific documents or using all the information that is in your case that you've already collected to meet the different criteria to show very targeted or tailored information against set field values, set block values. It's very multi-use, so it can replace or augment any form in your case data. It does not, it lives in that case data, that matter case table, and pulls off of that data. And you can use it to replace just about any action that you're currently doing on a case, from intake to closing. So it's very kind of multi-use in that way. It is more limited in that currently it's only available on cases. So you're not going to be able to use it for outreaches. You're not really going to be able to use it for timekeeping, especially not timekeeping that is outside of the cases module. There's also a learning curve, especially if you have a site that's maybe a little bit older, that you're not using guided navigation. I always recommend taking one small piece of your site, one form, something very specific, something very concrete, and just see, as you end up needing to rebuild it, which we all need to rebuild different parts of our sites from time to time because our needs change, our funding changes, what have you. I really recommend taking something small and just rebuilding one small piece of your site, rather than maybe trying to replace your entire intake or all of the forms on your cases module, because there is a learning curve there. Our third tool is our scheduled reports tool, and this allows us to set up a schedule to send reports every day, every month, to specific people. This and the next one, our activity presets, are some of our foundational automated parts of our sites that don't get as much of the glory as some of our newer pieces, but I think that they're definitely worth, if you're not using them, they're definitely worth taking a little bit of time just to take a look at. So for our scheduled reports, they're known. This is a tried and true and really a tested part of our system. And you're probably already using reports for something. You're in reports, maybe you're using reports for funders or for case management, or just making sure that your data is clean. You're already in reports and really utilizing them. So this is a kind of a way to turbocharge a module that you're already using. It can access any data in your system. This is really a pro or a con, right? On the plus side, you can create a report for anything. If you want to create a report and about what grants have an expiration date coming up in the next 6 months and send that to your grant manager, You can create that report. It's not specific to cases. It's not specific to timekeeping. It's all the data that you can get into a report. You can schedule send in a scheduled report. It does mean that all the data in your system is available for you to create a report. That includes personally identifiable information, so things like social security numbers, dates of birth, addresses, etc. Please be careful with this. Email is not a secure medium. And so only send that data that does not include PII, personal information. This is also a good way to get some information, to get maybe a trigger to do a task into your email. We have a whole bunch of different ways to see information, to get alerts, to see messages, but people really live and die in their email. And this really allows you to get into that inbox and provide people information where they really need it and get it most. The next one is activity presets, and this allows you to create a calendar or an outcome record based on activities that you're putting into the site. And by activities, I literally mean activities. There is a module in LegalServer called activities. This is not actions on a case. These are activities. So actions on a case may be timekeeping, it may be case notes, it may be litigations. These are things that are literally within the LegalServer activity module, which we'll see when we get into some of the specific examples, but I just want to call that out for clarity. So much are scheduled reports. This is known. Activity presets have been around for as long as I've been here. So these are, again, tried, true, and tested. They are the underpinning to many groups' use of LegalServer and are really known in that way. I really focus here on our calendar records, so events, tasks, and deadlines. Outcomes are also available, but they're not quite the same case outcomes as most groups are used to. So I really just focus here on calendar records. So these are, again, your events, tasks, or deadlines. If you want to say, hey, I went to court, and at the end of every court date, I get prompted to create an event for the next court date because it's never the last one, you can do that within activity presets. It uses case data, and this is the activities block is a block that can be used on any auxiliary or intake form on a case. So you're always able to insert it into any process that your team is already using in LegalServer. It's also editable. So the users can edit the title, the time, etc. This can be a pro or a con, right? If you want things to automatically get created without your users being able to opt out of them, without your users being able to edit the title, this is not going to be the module for you. But if you want just to prompt folks, hey, remember, do you need a follow-on task, or do you need a deadline? Does this activity generate those things? Activity presets can be really helpful for this. The final one that I'm going to include here, and this is the only one that is an additional cost, is our workflows. And this triggers actions when a specific set of conditions are met. I think about it as a little bit of a if this then that engine in LegalServer that runs in the background. So some of the real pros for this is that it's flexible. So this works across not all modules, but many of them, and more are being added. It's also very active. So we're always adding actions and triggers to just make sure that to meet different use cases and to meet different needs. So this is very much in development and active development. It's released out on sites, and we have many sites that are utilizing it. Much like our formula fields, this is very powerful. It allows you to be that mini developer by grouping together different conditions and triggering different actions. These are pros and cons. It really allows you to manipulate a lot of data all at one time. And you can change a lot of data very quickly. It's very impactful in that way. The one thing that didn't make it onto the slide that I do want to call out, it is also silent. So this can change that data in the background. Your users don't have to do anything. It works off of a series of scripts that just run in the background to see, hey, are the criteria met to trigger this workflow? And then the workflow gets triggered. So you don't have to rely on a user to go to a specific form or to go to a specific process. It does that all in the background. So that's really an overview of our 5 different currently in production automation tools. We're going to go now to some use cases where the rubber meets the road. And this goes to really just talk about there are different ways to approach any issue in LegalServer. So you'll see for a lot of these, there are several different options that are presented, and we'll talk about each of them. We're not going to go through and do a full soup to nuts creation for each of these, but just enough to give you a sense of what is possible. So the first one is going to be creating a task and automatically creating a task. And so to see that, I'm on my demo site. One way is to do this through our activity presets. So I'm on my admin tab and I've started to type in activity, and we see here our activity presets. Again, this does not need to be turned on. This is just available on your site right now. You can follow along on your demo site, and you'll see I have one set up for a follow-up after a first appearance. To create a new one, you can just come over to this side right here and say create new preset. I'm going to go ahead and edit the one that I've got set up so that we can see what we have here. We have our name, we have whether it's active, and then you can really set a different grouping of criteria that when met, it's going to prompt the user, do you want to create a task as a result of this activity? So one of the options is the activity type. Is this the petitioner or the respondent? Your options may be different, but the question, is it based on the actor? Maybe there's something that happens only when a petitioner is selected, or something that only when a respondent is selected. The way that I have it set up, it's when the activity action of court appearance is selected, which is our action. And then our item, which is one step below the action in the activities hierarchy, is the first appearance. So anytime there's a court appearance and the item is a first appearance, it is going to prompt the person entering that information. Do you want to, in this case, create a task or a to-do to send confirming letter to the client? And then I've got some default value set. So the due date is 10 days after today's date. I have different task types. In this case, it's contacting the client, who the default user is, and that's going to be whoever the person entering the activity is. But you have different options. You could say, I want to assign this task to all users who are currently assigned to the case. You could also set it as the primary assignment. Then we've got our default office, which is either going to be the primary assigned office, and that's the assigned office of the case, or the office of the user. Same thing with program. And I can have more than one. So this is set up for a task. I could also add an event. Maybe I want to say, yes, you have to create this task. You also have to create an event for the next court date. And I could do that here. When I'm on a case, and in this situation, I'm in my demo site. Again, I'm looking at a client. If I go to actions and I go to add an activity, and I select, I've got my activity of a court appearance, my item, which is my first appearance, and we can see I'm being prompted to enter my task here. So the name of the task title is already pre-populated. The due date is 10 days from today's April 2nd. and then I have an option for a note. Because tasks can also be case alerts, I'm prompted to create a case alert. And then down here are my other activity options. And again, here in my activity, if I go to admin and I edit the form, we can see this activity block is just like any other block. So right now it's on its own, but I could add this to a form or a process that all of my advocates go through every time they come back from court, where maybe they enter a case note or they enter timekeeping or they enter any number of things. Even if you're not utilizing activities as your primary way to record actions on a case, you can add activities and strategic points throughout your user's workflow to make sure that you're capturing and creating some of these calendar events. So the other way to automatically create a task is going to be on workflows. And so here I am, I'm in my workflows page. Again, I got here by going to admin and typing in workflows, just like I got to the activity presets by going to admin and typing in activity. And I'm just going to use the example here of this new case open. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to click on edit. And this page is going to take just a second to load. But what this page is doing, what this workflow is doing right now, and this is not creating a task, but we'll add a task in a second. Right now it's creating a case alert. So I've got its name up here. I've got active and the module. Some groups like to have a grouping of different workflows together, which can be very helpful for organization. And then we have different trigger types. So I have like time since an event, or a disposition change, or a field value. In this situation, I've got a new case for the current client. So this would trigger anytime a new case is created and is then associated with a current client in your system or in my system. If I want to further restrict what records are impacted, I could add some additional filters. So if I only want this to happen for housing cases, or I only want this to happen for cases in a specific program or in a specific office, I could limit that here by the different fields that are available. I'm going to leave this as inactive for right now. And right now, this is creating an alert, and I can either set it to notify the primary assignment or all current assignments. It's creating a case alert. I could also have it create a client alert, which will put that alert on all of those client cases. And then I can also set a trigger date if I want to. The other thing that I could do is I could create a task. Again, I could create a deadline, and that task could either be, hey, update that case record, update the new advocate, or just run whatever processes that you'd like. I'm not going to actually create a task here because there's not a lot to show. Once this is set up, my users do not have to go to a specific form. They don't need to go to a specific process. These are scripts that will just consistently run in the background to say, hey, do I have any records that meet this requirement? So that can be really helpful. Again, not to need to have anybody looking and making sure that they're doing all the things. This will just automatically run. The next use case that we have is prompting for a notice of eviction. Again, and I'm not going to go back through workflows, but you could have a workflow that either sends an external form or launches a process that prompts the client or the advocate to upload a notice of eviction. The other way to do that is to use guided navigation. So I'm back here on my Jimmy Page case, and I'm going to come to actions, and I'm going to come to this test. So this is what the prompt for a notice of eviction could look like. Again, it's the simple document with title block that is in a guided navigation on an auxiliary process. This orange box here is only here because I am the admin, and therefore I can edit. Your regular users aren't going to see this. But if I come in here and I edit this segment, we'll see I've got a dialogue name, I've got my segment name, and I've got this block. And in this case, this is set up to only show when the legal problem code is 63 private landlord tenant. And you could actually add this to any of the legal problem codes, really any field. And you could add that segment or add these elements to any process. If you're doing an intake or you are updating the case and you have your standard set of questions and you want to upload the notice of eviction only for these cases with a 63 legal problem code, you can set that logic for this block. You could add different rules to this triggering logic. So I could add another field that will give me, maybe I only want to see this for cases that have a county of residence in Seneca County. I could switch this to or. I could also add a grouping and get more specific. So you can get more and more specific, more and more exacting in your triggering of either a block or a field or showing an instruction. You can also here set default values for a block. Again, generate a document or add a case note. You can also perform an API call based on these or set a field value. So there's a lot of really powerful actions that can be done here. You can also, within the guided navigation, specify what segment you go to next with that same expressions editor. So if you have multiple kind of exit points, you can push that out to different segments in the dialogue. You can also exit out into a wholly separate dialogue. So there are other training videos that get really in depth on this, but this is a really great way to do some of those non-linear processes where it's not exactly A goes to B, goes to C, goes to D, but maybe the results of the inputs, the answers to questions on forms A and B means that you go to F, but then you go back to D. You can program that all through our guided navigation. So again, this is we started with a pretty simple example just to show you what that could look like, but it can get very complicated. So the next one is catching a miscoded case early. So again, the guided navigation, workflows, also formula fields, which we'll talk about in just a second, those are all ways that can prevent miscoding when it's happening. One way to catch miscoding early and often is going to be through reports and scheduled reports. So again, this is just one example, and let your imagination go with this. But in this case, I have a data quality report. So these are all of my cases that have a disposition of closed where the case status is not closed. So I can see here, my case status is pending a case meeting, but my disposition is closed. I have that here on my filters. Disposition is closed. Case status is anything other than that. So this is only going to pull back those cases that are miscoded, that there's a problem with. If I wanted to go ahead and I have a couple of options, I can embed that into a front page of somewhere. And I can also go to reports and under my actions, add my schedule reports. So if I want to add a new schedule report here, I would make it active. I would fill in a description. I would have my data quality report and the parts to send, and then start date, the months, the dates, the number of the day, and when it gets sent. an email body, and then who's going to receive those reports. So it's just an easy, lightweight way, again, that you have right now at your disposal to just go ahead and start automating some of those data quality checks. It can be very helpful where maybe you have some changes to grant requirements, or you've added some fields to capture grant information to set up a data quality report as your staff is getting used to these new requirements and getting out ahead of some of that miscoding. The last one is just a really quick, when does that visa expire in a formula field? And so here I'm back on my demo site. I've started to type in field and I'm in my custom field management. If I come here and under actions, I can create a new formula field. If you don't see that option, just email support@legalserver.org and we will get that enabled for you. And here you can see this looks a lot like your regular custom fields, just with this formula editor as a difference. So I have the option of creating a custom field on a calendar event, on an activity, on a case, an organization, a whole bunch of different options here. I'm going to stay in the case. And then I can add different operators. I can add different fields. So if I have my date of visa is issued and I want to add 45 days to that, I can come down here. I can name that whatever I'd like. And when I save it, it's just going to act just like a regular custom field. So I could add it to a report. I could add it to a profile. I could really add it anywhere I would normally. I have the options for a description and help text and grouping. If I have a site that has that's multilingual, I can create a different short name and description. This is only like one example, and you could see if I wanted to do some logical operators and I wanted to add a bunch of things. If all these things are true, then populate this in some other way. Or if any of these are true, or if none of these are true, if they're all false, there's a whole bunch of different options here that you can really see and that you can play with and experiment with. I would really suggest, if you're interested in this, especially if you have anything that requires math just to calculate, if you have any SQL statements in your reports, any special columns that either we or a consultant have tried to create for you in reports, take a look and see if you can replace those with this. It really puts that programming back in your hands and really make sure that you can do that. So just some final sort of thoughts, some takeaways. The first thing that I always recommend, know your tools, know what tools are available to you in LegalServer, which ones are free, perhaps which ones have a cost associated with them. You can always reach out to support@legalserver.org and ask. You can say, hey guys, I'm trying to do this thing. How would you recommend solving this problem? What is your recommended approach? By knowing your tools and then really knowing the problem you're trying to solve, you can use and leverage the best parts of LegalServer to make sure that you're automating the site to the best of your ability, to the best of our ability, that you're taking as much of the work off of your advocates and maybe off of yourself as humanly possible. The real thing, though, as you're setting these up, is to really test them, making sure that the outcome that you expect is the outcome that you are getting, and taking some real time to test and confirm that what you expect to have happen is, in fact, what is happening. And then always having the opportunity to refine, whether you're testing this on demo or whether you're testing it on live, making sure that you have a plan on, if it doesn't work in testing, how am I going to refine this? How am I going to undo what I've done? And leaving that ability to really fine tune what you're doing, how you're using these tools, and how you're automating your site. Thank you very much for your time today. We're happy to help. And thanks again.